1, 2, and 3 are pretty much the same thing. So we'll do 1, and then you'll do 2 and 3. And then for the other ones, we're going to kind of jump around. But I think of all the problems, we do 5 total. All right, so looking at question number 1, for these problems, we have a log on both sides. So remember, Ln stands for log base. This one stands for log base as well. When you have a log with the same base on both sides, those actually cancel out with each other. And we're just going to set this part equal to this side and solve for the variable. So we're going to do negative 4n plus 7 equals negative 5n plus 7. Alright, so we get all our variables to one side. So we're going to add 5n to this side. So negative 4n plus 5n is just 1n, which you really don't need the 1 there. Equals 7. And then we move all our numbers to the other side. So we're going to subtract 7. And this is not ln, this is actually 1n. I know it's ln. So 1n equals 7 minus 7 is just 0. So when we divide both sides by 1, anything 0 divided by anything is always just 0. So here, 0 can be an answer. So if you get an answer as 0, and we divide it, and that is okay for these types of problems. Alright, so do the same thing for 2 and 3. Cancel out the bases, because they'll be the same. They have to be the same. So you'll have the same subscript on both of them, cancel them out, and then cancel them out, set them equal to each other, and solve for x. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all the same type of problem. We're going to do 4 and 7, because 4, we have to convert it, not solve it, we're just converting it. And then 7 is a multi-step one, so I'm going to do that one with you. But then 5 and 6 you can do on your own. So for number 4 here, what they want you to do is take this exponent form, just like we did before, and write it in log form. So if you remember, in log form, the base drops down, so this number is going to come down and be the subscript. And the other two things switch. So my exponent is going to go to this side of the equation. And my value, my answer, is going to go inside the log. So for this one, that's really all we need to do. So we're going to type in these 3 numbers. So the subscript, I know this doesn't look little, but the little number is going to be 12. The number inside the log is 3. And the number that is equal to the exponent on the other side is x. But what you're going to do for numbers 5 and 6 is you're actually going to find this answer. So once you get this, once you convert it, you're going to come over here to the calculator, and you're going to go control log, which is 10px, and you'll put the little subscript inside, and you'll put the argument there, and you'll get your decimal. Most of them are going to be the 4 decimal places. So again, you'll choose which one it is, and you'll choose which one it is. Okay, so for the other problems, you're actually going to solve it once you write it in the other form. Okay, but the other one we're going to do together is number 7, because it's a multi-step one, so we are going to solve it. But before we can convert it, there are some things we have to do first. All right, so you can do 5 and 6 in just a second. So go ahead and let's do 7. So we have 7 times 12 to the negative 8x plus 5 minus 10 equals 41. So before we can do the whole converting thing, when we write it in the other form, the exponent part has to be by itself. So here's the exponent part with its base. So this part we have to get by itself first, and then we can write it in the other form. So before we convert, we have to subtract or add the number on the outside. So the number we're going to add or subtract is the 10. Since it's minus here, we add it to the the other side. And again, this is where you're going to need your calculator because there's going to end up being a lot of decimals. So 41 plus 10 first gives us 51. So 7 times, get this up here, 7 times 12 to the negative 8x plus 5 equals 51. But again, the base part still isn't by itself. So we got to get rid of the 7 in the front. Don't multiply the 7 and the 12. It doesn't work like that. You have to divide both sides by that number in the front. So divide. If it's a fraction, you multiply, but most of the time we end up dividing by the 7. And we get 12 to the negative 8x plus 5 equals, and then let's go ahead and divide this one. So 51 divided by 7 is 51 over 7. So if you want it as a decimal, you can write it as a decimal, but I don't want to write a bunch of decimals yet. So I'm going to leave it as that. And then now, since the exponent is by itself, the base and the exponent is by itself, now we can change the exponent to log form. So we're going to write it as a log. So log, the 12 is going to be my base. So this number comes down as the middle number. And the other two switch. So all this exponent stuff is going to go to the other side. And the 51 sevenths goes right here. Which is always in parentheses when you type it in. So from here, I'm going to end up with a bunch of decimals. So I'm not going to write all these decimals out. I'm just going to kind of walk through it here and type it in the calculator. So again, to type the log part in, you go Control Log. You're going to put the 12 as a subscript. 12 as a subscript. That's your base. And then 51 sevenths as your number. And we get that ugly decimal. Alright, so I'll kind of write it here, but I'm not going to write the whole thing because I'm just going to leave it in the calculator. So 0.799. So to this number, we're going to subtract the 5. So just over here, subtract 5. Again, it takes the whole decimal and it subtracts 5 from it. So I get negative 4.2008. And right here, it doesn't matter what you're rounding to because the calculator saves everything. But in the end, we want only 4 decimals. All right, so the last step would be to divide by the negative 8. So again, one more time over here. Divide by the negative 8. And we get our final answer. X equals 0.5251. And that's what we want to choose for our answer choice. So 0.5251. So again, this is the longest one. That's why I wanted to do it for you. You had every step. For number 5, you're only doing the converting step, which is like the important part. So this part you're always going to do to get to the other form. And then for number 6, there's an adding or multiplying step that you have to do first, and then you convert. So again, you have to convert at some point. The top part and the bottom part aren't necessarily going to happen, but the middle part for sure will. Alright, so you can go do 5 and 6 now. Okay, and just like we did before, I'm going to do 8 because you're converting here, and then I'll do 10 because that's a long one. But then you can come back and do, I'll do 8 and 11, and you can come back and do 9 and 10 in the middle. All right, so looking at 8, again, 8 just wants you to convert. But this time, it's giving you log form. Log of 10,000 equals 4. The reason I wanted to do this one with you is to remind you what the base is when there's not a number there. So when it's just log and no subscript, you have to remember that the base is a 10. So when we drop it down, the first thing we're going to do is drop the 10. and then switch the 4 here, and the 10,000 goes to the other side. So all this goes to the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if it's log with no base, it's a 10. Remember, if it's an LN, just like we did on the first example, then that means it's log with a base of e. I don't know if you're going to see that one, but you might when you do 9 and 10. Log with no base is 10. LN is log with base e. All right, so for this problem, we're just typing these 3 numbers in. So my base was 10. My exponent is 4. And it's equal to the 10,000. For the ones that you're going to have to do for question number 9 and 10, you're going to convert it first like this, but then you're actually going to have to solve it. So you'll type it in the calculator to get what this number actually is. So this time I actually gave you the number, it's 10,000, but that's the part you're looking for. That's where your x is going to be. So you have to be able to find it. You just type it in the calculator and you get your answer. All right, so you're going to do 9 and 10, but let's do 11 because, again, that's the long one. And it's not asking for the answer here, it's asking for the steps. Okay, so we'll solve it to the side. And as we're solving it, we'll come here and label each step. Okay, so before you can convert it to the other form, before you can rewrite an exponential form, the log and everything inside the parentheses needs to be by itself, just like the exponential was. So the first thing we need to do is move that 4 to the other side. So we're going to subtract 4 from the 31. So we're going to get 9 log base 8 of negative 2n plus 7 equals, and then, I mean, you can use calculator for these. It's not going to be as important going this way, but you're still going to be doing some adding and subtracting. So it might be nice to have the calculator. Okay, so what did we do first? Step 1, we subtracted 4 from both sides. So subtract 4 from both sides. Step 2, again, the log part is still not completely by itself because we have that 9 in the front. So the next step is to divide the 9 away. Don't distribute it into the parentheses. Don't multiply it. Divide it to the other side. And we get log base 8 of negative 2n plus 7 equals 27 divided by 9 is just 3. So again, step 2, divide both sides by 9. Okay, so once the log is by itself, then you can write it in exponent form. So in exponent form, this little number becomes your base. The subscript comes down and that's your base. And the other two things switch. So all this stuff inside the log is going to come over here. Negative 2n plus 7. And the 3 becomes my exponent here. Right, and then at this point, it's just solving for x problem, but you need to find out what this number is. What is 8 to the third? 8 to the third is 512. So 512 equals negative 2n plus 7. So again, what did we do there? We just wrote it from log form, we wrote it in exponent form. So rewrite in exponential form. And then we just solve for x from here. So again, you should be able to finish this one. Solve for x, we subtract 7 from both sides. From the 512, we're going to subtract 7. And we get 505. 505 equals negative 2n. And then divide by the negative 2. Divide by negative 2. And we get our answer is, well, that, if you need it as a decimal, over here and do menu, number 2, and then decimal, and it puts it in decimal form. But we're not actually solving this one, we're just saying the steps that we did. So after we wrote it in exponential form, that's this step, then we subtracted 7 from both sides. Subtract 7 from both sides. And then at the end, divided by the -2. Divide by the -2. But if you wanted the answer, you have the answer there to choose. So again, for 9 and 10, you are going to not do this much work, but just do the middle step where you're converting. So rewrite it in exponent form, drop the base, switch the other two, and solve. Here, drop the base, switch the other two, and solve for the variable. All right, but that last one is the one that takes the most work. So go ahead and finish up, and get your last homework turned in.